Hello and welcome to another episode of the DJ Project Criterion Collection. And here we're going to talk about Spine 449, Missing, directed by Costa-Gavras, 1982. Okay, I'm going to get this out of the way. Aside from the fact that it was on Criterion, the only other reason why I got this film right away was because the music was done by Vangelis. In fact, this marks the only film where he was involved in, where he did the music is in the Criterion Collection. And yes, Blade Runner was once a Criterion Laserdisc, but obviously it's not it's not DVD or Blu-ray. But what is available is definitely excellent. So it's not just Criterion that makes top quality releases. You know, I like it whenever they are. But anyways, so yes, I got it solely because of the man who does the soundtrack. And as I probably mentioned before, I've done music, and I still do music to some extent. And Vangelis is a very important figure for me musically. A lot of my tendencies and the way I think about music can be you can either thank him or you can blame him for it. So, anyways, so that's why I initially got the film. But I have to say that the film itself definitely helped me to open a window into other respects. The film itself covers pretty accurately, with the exception of certain names changes and perhaps a few minor alterations for the sake of dramatic license. But for the most part, I would say that this is 99.9% accurate. This is the story of the disappearance and the eventual knowledge that he was executed of Charles Horman. Okay, the story goes this all centers on the 1973 coup led by Pinochet to overthrow President Allende. This happened on September 11th, 1973. So sometimes it's referred to as that, as the September 11th, 1973 coup. And Charles and Beth in the film, Joyce in real life, were caught up in it, and eventually, and about a week or so after the coup, Charles himself was taken, and for the longest time, it was presumed by his wife and then also his father that he was missing, that he simply disappeared. But then eventually the truth came out, well, sort of came out, that he was actually executed. And so, but what makes the film... Now, this is an example of a political film done right. And I would say that Costa-Gavras, now the only other film of his that I've seen is Z, which will be coming soon on the pipeline. I have every confidence to call him a political filmmaker and one who makes political films right. And I'll repeat this again when I get into Z, but what makes a really good political film is that the film itself is, first off, a compelling story. I don't want to call this entertaining because that's not quite it. I mean, you are drawn into the story, since the story is really about is about a father and a wife trying to find his son, her husband, respectively, and dealing with and in the backdrop is this coup and the aftermath of that coup. The focus is really on the human story. It doesn't try to make any kind of assertions or claims. And in true spirit of the film, I'm not going to be partisan in this case. I'm going to stay true to kind of the film itself. So it doesn't try to take any kind of it doesn't try to make any kind of political statement. It just deals with the facts and the situation as is. In fact, what makes this film particularly compelling is that you have this human drama playing out all in the midst of this major political change. Every now and then you hear gunshots firing in the distance while people are talking. Even when they're inside or near inside of a hotel, there's always the presence of some of gunfire there that shows that there's still, that even after the immediate event of the coup, which is only alluded to, you never actually are shown anything that went on. But even supposedly after that came through, it still lingers. So it's this ever present thing, but it's not the sole attention. But at the same time, it's something that adds to the drama, that gives it a little bit more weight. And by taking this fairly neutral stance of having the film present itself and not trying to make any kind of bold claims, not trying to say that this side is right, this side is wrong, and by avoiding the partisan tendencies in politics and just sort of presenting it as is, it does allow discussion to take place, because you're just presenting it there, and it does give a way for both sides of an issue or many sides of an issue to kind of come together and kind of come to terms with this. If it had taken a hard stance on either kind of position, I think it would have. I've said this before. It would have preached to the choir and alienated the other half. And this is what I think, something that Costa-Gavras understands both intuitively and analytically, is that if you want to make a film that reaches a wide audience, the worst thing you can do is to alienate half of it, to eliminate half of it just by taking a side. So what he was interested in was less on the politics, although he knew that politics always fascinates him and it drives him to make films, but he didn't want to make it overt. He didn't want to make a film about the coup itself. He wanted to focus strictly on this story about a father and a wife trying to find his son and her husband. This happens to take place in Chile in 1973. And of course, the film never explicitly says Chile, and Pinochet is never explicitly mentioned by name, even though the city names of Santiago and Vina del Mar are explicitly mentioned. This was because this was made still at the time of when Pinochet was in power. In fact, the film was banned during his rule there, and it was. And then when it was initially released in the United States, there was a certain degree of controversy, but it never got in the way of distribution. The only hiccup it got was a lawsuit, because basically what the story is it turns out that Charles is missing, and very likely he was arrested, but his father, Ed Horman, tries to find out where he is, and so he goes to the usual political channels. Now, this is a guy who had a certain faith in God and country, and trusted his government and trusted the American way of life. But over the course of this journey, he learns quite tragically, and this is where I can say that this is one of the takeaways that I take from this, is that the government is not really there for him. He's you would like to think that the government is there. If you believe that the government, particularly the United States government, is there to protect the rights, the natural rights of its citizens, including life, liberty, and property, and then you find out that it doesn't really matter. It's really, really upsetting, and of course, and so likewise, he was upset by all of this, and Beth/Joyce was also upset by all of this, and then it just continued down the line. Anyways, the point is that this hiccup occurred when the when the ambassador, the consulate, and one of the military personnel that was there in Chile, they followed suit against Universal, Costa-Gavras, and Thomas Hauser, from which the book, who wrote the book from which this is based on, for defamation of character. And because of this, there was a time when the film was pulled from the market. But then when the suit against Hauser was dismissed and the other lawsuit was lost, it then was brought back into circulation. But that's really the only hiccup. It didn't prevent the film from winning Best Adapted Screenplay for that year in terms of the Academy Awards. It was also nominated for Best Picture that year as well, and it also won the Palme d'Or in 1982, along with, and it was one of those tie situations. Yol, Turkish film, which also had some airs of political oppression. So I guess that was the theme of the year. America had E.T. and Europe had politics, so or oppressive politics. So, but again, it's what makes it really compelling is that while it is set in a political setting, it's ultimately about this very human and personal story. Which, interestingly, something similar happened to Costa-Gavras' wife. They were in, I believe they were in, I want to say Vietnam or Thailand, somewhere in Southeast Asia. And there was a spell where she went missing. And so it's one of those affairs where, it's one of those situations where it's a story that can happen really to anybody. And especially if you go to certain places where you have these things happen, it's very likely that it will happen. So the emphasis is more on the human story. And because of this, I think when you have that, and then in this political backdrop, it makes it really, really compelling. One of my favorite shots, in fact, this actually is part of the cover, is Charles Horman before he was arrested, and he's actually at a hotel in Viña del Mar, and he's woken up by the sound of this helicopter approaching. So he steps out to the balcony and walks along and sees this helicopter fly around, and it's a very I really like that shot because it's this it's so unusual and interesting. There's a parallel shot that happens on the rooftop restaurant at the Hotel Carbonera, where this is at night, and again there's a helicopter kind of flying over, and presumably he's shooting somebody. The helicopter is shooting someone down below, and everybody kind of crowds around and sees this helicopter pass by. There are other moments like that where there are some incidences that happen to Ed Horman that are similar to what happened to Charles Horman. So it also feeds into the idea of father or like father, like son, and at the same time, this is a father coming to know his son, because it was presumed in the beginning that there was a lot of disagreements between the two of them, and they never really saw eye to eye on most anything, but over the course of it, he comes in by trying to find him. He also starts to find who he is and loves him all the more, and he comes to terms with all of those differences, and in the end kind of sees it more from his side as well. So it's interesting to see that. And speaking of Ed Horman, I forgot to mention the other sort of pink elephant in there. Ed Horman is played by Jack Lemmon, which is one of those situations where you think, what? How does that work? And he gives a really moving performance, and it's because when you look at him, there's this sense of vulnerability, and I think that's exactly what was needed in there, because he was. There's a paradox. On the one hand, he's very vulnerable. He's powerless against the system, but at the same time, there is a stubbornness and a determination to do the right thing. If you believe you know what the right thing is, you should do it. So he has that fierceness to him as well, and he can exude that. But at the same time, he can also exude vulnerability, and you really do feel like that this is a man that's pushed around by a lot of different people and a lot of different forces that are beyond his control, and it's very moving. It's so moving. He was nominated for Best Actor that year, and at the Cannes Film Festival, he won Best Actor. So, this is one of those great cases where the comedic actor or the actor that is best known for comedy doing a serious role and pulling it off, and people were initially Costa-Gavras actually championed him, and others around the production were kind of a little hesitant about it, and he says, no, I really think that this will work, and he was able to make it work. So, but yeah, it's a very, very, very compelling film. That's and you would think with its subject matter, given that it deals with a lot of politics, particularly United States foreign intervention and what happened in Chile with Allende and then Pinochet. It's a very, very heated. And again, I don't want to make this review more politically charged than it probably already is. But I will say that no matter where you stand on any of it, or where you stand on the principal players, it really is a film kind of for everybody. The only people that I think will be really disappointed is that if you're really, really adamant on either side of it. If you somehow didn't like, or if you somehow liked Pinochet, you probably would not like it. And likewise, if you wanted to have a scene where Pinochet is foaming at the mouth and going the evil route, you may not like it either. So, but really for most other people, because again, this is what makes politics so charged, is that sometimes it's the people who feel for an issue very intensely is what alienates everybody else. And because it's so emotionally driven, it doesn't lead to the best discussions. Look at YouTube. But this is one of those cases where you can make something that has a certain political significance, but it doesn't have to be alienating because of the politics. It can actually be in a certain sense inviting, and it could be at the very least, and certainly it's a means of facilitating discussion about whatever issues are raised in the film. And so with that, I definitely recommend this film. Certainly I would recommend it if you do like political thrillers, which is essentially what it is, and that's what Costa-Gavras is best known for. This was my introduction to Costa-Gavras. Probably a better. It's not to say that Missing is bad, but the film that certainly launched his career and certainly had a lot of the was the first major display of all the traits that he would be best known for. You see that in Z. So I would probably put Z a little bit over than Missing, but I still will recommend Missing. So, but yeah, Missing. And until next time, take care.